you didn't make it to the airport on time for whatever reason, and we had to cancel it. And I was so sad because I felt that would have been such an incredible little addition to the show, and particularly my Vex's character. Like, I was like, if anybody was going to play Vex's dad, that would be the guy.
Yeah.
And we had these scenes written out, and they were great. And
Gene Simmons.
Yeah. Or Gene Simmons. Yeah. So yeah, there's something that didn't happen that may have happened.
Okay, my final question for you two is: you guys were in a movie called Sex After Kids, and I watched the trailer. I thought it looked great. I really want to see this movie. I know it came out like last year, but could you talk a little bit about working on that film?
It's on demand.
Well, Sex After Kids was developed by Jeremy Lalonde, who's a young, upcoming, very talented director in Toronto. I met Jeremy about 4 or 5 years ago with his first feature. He's an editor by trade, and he's worked into everything now: script writing, directing, producing. Like, he's a one-man army, and very talented. And we did Paul Shepard, which was a very small little mockumentary kind of movie about a young man in love.
With Zoe.
With Zoe. That's where I met Zoe before. That was in between shooting the pilot and shooting season 1. So I don't know if you know this or not, but Zoe did not play Dr. Lauren in our pilot. There was another actress who played her, but who was not comfortable with some of the things, and some of the sexuality with the show. So they had to recast. And so when I had worked with Zoe on Paul, we're talking about Lost Girl. She's like, "Oh, that sounds really cool," only to find out a year later that we're working together again on it. It was terrific. But Jeremy he's an amazing talent. He writes these scripts too. So Sex After Kids was his second offering. It was ultra low budget. We shot it because we shot it over 8 weekends over an entire summer. So we would shoot during the week on Lost Girl and go on our weekends and shoot this movie. I'll never do that again.
Wow.
And we were really dubious about what kind of a project it was going to come out to.
Yeah, it was tough because it was a series of vignettes. Yeah, it was a very Altman-esque approach to the movie, and I had no idea what it was going to be like because everything I had to do was with Zoe, and then that one scene with you. So it was like you had no real sense of the movie.
He calls it a scene with me. I'm just laying passed out on the floor.
Yeah. So and that's not the first time that's happened. So yeah, it was great. It was a great movie, and I think it did really, really well. It's a really sweet little comedy, and particularly if you are a father,
or a mother.
Or a mother.
There are.
There are mother.
Oh yeah,
it was an awesome
people that pop them
movie.
out.
Yeah, please check it out. It's on demand. It's a very cute little romantic comedy. High on the comedy. And it's really
And if
sweet.
you like it, go on Indie and buy it because the extras are super.
Oh, are they? Good to know.
Oh, I haven't seen
Oh,
the
come on, you
extras.
two doing commentary?
Oh!
Really? That was on there.
I remember that.
That was like midwinter at my house.
Yes, and there was beer.
Oh yeah, we were drinking.
Oh yeah,
I was a little under the weather, I think.
Yeah.
As usual.
Yeah.
I have a 7-year-old son who just brings home like he's a petri dish. He's just like, here, Daddy. Disease.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I forgot. I remember we were very low energy at first, and then we kind of ramped up.
Yeah.
I didn't think we were particularly funny though.
Oh, yes, you were.
Oh boy. I'll have to watch that.
Thanks for the info about the movie. I mean, like I said, the trailer looked amazing. Okay, now time for questions. Who has a question? Oh, good. One brave person. Stand up, please.
I had a question about sort of watching yourself. Like, do you ever watch what you've done? Watch Lost Girl, and then see a scene that came out really different from what you thought it was after editing and.
Not so much. I mean, I am sometimes surprised a bit by, if my performance, maybe subtle things, but after a while, you know what you're doing as you're doing it. I mean, they can mess with it in editing a bit. Like, yes, if they cut out the climactic scene, part of the scene where, you know, the scene turns and they cut that out, then yeah, that's shocking. But for the most part, you kind of know what you're doing as you're making it. And like, often I'll go back to the camera and I'll actually watch the take just to make sure how it was reading.
And that's, I'd say that's also down to the nature of how we film. Is that, you know, you've only got so many cracks of the word, you know, you've got to get it right pretty quickly, to be honest with you. So your room for maneuver is different. But for instance, like I'm working with a director right now he just did a movie last year, and he said that he would try and get like 25 takes, because he's very similar to Jeremy in the sense that he's a director-editor. And director-editors, what they prefer to do is to get a range of performances within the scene. And they can take a lot of takes, and then they'll take all of that footage and they'll craft your performance based on the range, based on what they want to do, which is very different to our show, which is like we go in and from start to finish in that scene, I know exactly what I want to get out of it. But working sometimes in film, particularly more independent film, you can sometimes see a scene that you do and you go, oh wow, I would never have built my performance that way, but that's really interesting.
But we just don't have the time a lot. Like, we do 3 takes, and if there's screw up 4, only if there's something technically or something wrong. But I mean, you don't get a chance to do multiple performances. It's like you lay it.
There's a little bit, a tiny bit of room for maneuver.
Like, if you're not delivering a moment and the director catches it or really wants you to put something in, yes. But for the most part, really, we only get to do one version of what we do.
Yeah, and there's all different kinds of mediums. It's like, you know, I'm working in a medium like right now with like motion capture, and you have to, there is only one way that thing can be done. So you spend the whole time compressing, rehearsing, and doing different things until you get that one. And once you nail that one, that's it. There's no other. It's just, choose A. That's my A, that's my B, and everything else is cut. And you may have done like 15 or 20 of them. But yeah, it's only that A and B, they're the only 2. But with us, it's very similar, I would say, to that.
Unless we're doing like things that are really outside of what we've like the body swapping episode, for instance. They throw that out at you, and it's like, oh, I have a week to prepare another character, like a whole so, you know, I'm doing Kenzie, and I really didn't know how it was gonna read. Like, I was just like, hoping for the best. And you know, and this is the fun thing about Law School, is it throws you these curveballs every once. Like, every season.
There's one this season. There's a big one this season.
For sure. And I actually just watched the footage of it, and thank goodness. Like, it literally came together on the day. I didn't know it had to do, there was prosthetics involved, there was this or that, and I didn't know how this character I was gonna have to do, how it was gonna come across. And only because when you're dealing with prosthetics, it's a huge part of the character. And I only got the prosthetics on the day we were filming. So finally, like in between the makeup, which I got there at 3 o'clock in the morning, was in makeup for 4 hours, started shooting at 7:30 in the morning after the crew had set everything up. And I had like 20 minutes in my trailer to kind of look at myself and go, this is how I'm gonna look, okay. So what the hell do I do with this? And like, and you know, you quickly just, you know, that's where your instinct and your intuition comes in. And luckily, you know, so yes, for that, when I saw the final product just a few weeks ago, I was like, okay, yeah, I didn't know, but it worked.
Yeah.
Okay, sort of. Well,
yeah, we were all
challenged. You can, yes, totally.
Prosthetically.
Anybody else for a question? Yep.
Hi. It's obvious that you're all very close to each other. Do you call each other often?
Yeah. Most people I would hit back.
Oh, he did. He just doesn't remember it.
Oh, yeah. We're all close together, yes.
Yeah, no, we have a very tight cast. I mean, like,
yeah,
we've been blessed on this show. A lot of times, you know, there's different kinds of personalities in this industry. There's a lot of crazy people, but on Law School,
yeah, and
we're the crazy ones.
We're the crazy ones, and we often like to play tricks on people and do stuff like that. And we had some really good ones this year.
We did.
Well, first of all, I may as well tell this story.
You might as well.
I might as well tell this. Oh, schoolboy error. So first of all, there's a fan who every fan expo she brings me hot peppers, the hottest pepper in the world. So this year she brought me the Trinidadian Scorpion, which is the hottest pepper in the world, and I had like 6 of these in my fridge. So we were on a break where we went down to Niagara for the day on a wine tour with a bunch of our cast. And we did it twice this year with like our director, a bunch of us, and we got the Law School van. They gave us their van, they gave us the driver, and they sent us down to Niagara for the day. And we went wine tasting, and then we got back, to my place, and I have like an outdoor pool and distillery and in a condo. So we were all out there swimming in the night. So we're pretty deep at this point. It's a long day. And then I'm in my kitchen and we're all drinking, and Kris is having he's having a drink with Danielle. And I look in the fridge to get a drink, and I just see a bag of peppers. And I'm like, it's probably a good point for Saul to eat some melon. Maybe with this smeared all over it. So I cut it quietly in the corner, spread it all over this melon.
Just one piece of
melon. Just got to Kris, and it was like situated.
No, he wasn't. He was more conniving than that, because he knew that he could not have held back his mirth. So he sent it with a deliverer. So I'm sitting there, and yes, we're well into it. Even after a long day of drinking and other shenanigans, a watermelon sometimes just hits the spot, right? You're like, so here comes this innocent young woman with, Kris, would you like a watermelon? I'm like, you bet I would. And I'm standing by the window, have this glass of wine, I've got this watermelon, take a nice big bite of it. I'm talking to Danielle, it's Paul's partner, and I'm talking away. And I'm well enough gone at this point that I don't even really recognize what's happening in my face or mouth. All I know is that there's a fire and a numbness. And I thought I was having a stroke. I'm literally sitting there going, am I smelling burnt toast? Why can't I talk properly? Why are my lips 2 feet long and my tongue the size of my leg? What the fuck's happening to me? And I look up, and at this point, Danielle's looking at me going, you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. And then she looks over, and Paul is rolling around on the floor, peeing himself laughing. And I still can't make the, and Danielle's like, what is with Paul? My God, look at him. And I've got Paul's back, and I'm like, Danielle, you just have to, it's part of his personality, he loves being funny. He's really enjoying himself. And like she goes to pick up her watermelon. Don't eat the watermelon. What's wrong with the watermelon? And only then do we realize, oh fuck, I've been had. And yeah, so
then on set, there's an actor who plays a friend of X's in the show, a guy called Luke, and it was towards the end of the show when we were filming, and we had like 2 days left, and. We're all, we finished our scene, so we have a couple of beers in the trailer, and Rachel's there, and Rachel's really bad because she's always trying to, play tricks and pranks on people. And I told her about this prank, and she was so in for it. And I said, I'm gonna get a beer bottle, and I'm gonna like smudge it all in the hottest pepper in the world, and he just won't know. So we're all sat in Kris's trailer, like all the actors, and he's a young kid, so he's with the big crew, he's with the big boys. And we're all there, and I go, hey, you want a beer? And I give it to him. And he just lost the plot. But the worst thing that happened was his lips started to, like all of a sudden they started kind of explode a little.
They got, like, swelling, red.
And his whole face started to turn red.
He was sweating.
And he's like a really good-looking young guy. And we were looking at him, we're in hysterics, but then it just doesn't stop and stop. And we were just so lucky that it was like he had
I had to go get like yogurt. He was like
smearing yogurt all over his face.
Yeah.
So that's what I like to do.
And then we got Scarson. On the last day after Scarson got wrapped, you did the same thing on a bottle of beer, and then he also got her water bottle too. So she went from the beer to like, oh my God, to the water. I was like, oh! He was still filming.
It was later because first I gave her. We got given this really beautiful gift by Anna, which was to drink out of, and we were pouring champagne in it. We just literally finished the job. It was like the last day.
Last night.
So we poured her in there, and then as she left her room, I got in her room and smeared this whole thing that Anna had bought her, and then I did a water bottle in the corner. So then we were filming the last scene. She was done. Last scene ever on Lost Girl. And we're there. And she comes into the bar in front of the whole crew and she's fucking hitting me. How dare you! So we're laughing our heads off, and like she's like, and everyone in the crew is laughing.
Because
So
he
then
also did he created a tray that day. It was like a Russian roulette tray where it was all little pieces of melon, and he'd rubbed about 50% of the melons with this pepper, and people knew. They were like, "Hey, do you want to play? Enter at your own risk." And so like half the crew knew. How
So they all knew and they were all laughing. So we finished that and she goes away. Then literally about 15 minutes later, just after it started to die down, she went into her room and drank out of the water bottle. So then she came into the scene again. She goes, "I can't believe you did my water bottle!"
Yeah.
that was our last day on Lost Girl. Yeah, she'll never forget it.
No.
No.
You really are evil, Dark Fae.
Of course, you gotta know it to play it.
Anyone else? We got about 15 minutes, I guess.
Not 5 minutes, I think.
5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. Gentleman in back.
Can you tell us about Captain Canuck?
Yes, it's pronounced Canuck. First of all, or Canuck. Canuck. Yeah, we get all kinds of pronunciations.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic project. That Captain Canuck is a comic book that was originally started by Richard Cumley in the early mid-70s in Canada. It has had several remanifestations, incarnations over the years. But right now, the most recent one is Fadi Hakim, who is a friend of Paul's and owns a few restaurants in the city. He used to read this comic book as a kid, and in his kids' menu, he put the Captain Canuck hamburger or whatever. And he just sort of got his mind thinking. He looked into the rights to it, got in touch with Richard Cumley, got the rights, the permission to use them. And then,
and he's a huge comic book nerd himself, so, and he knows a lot of people in the city by way of owning a lot of the most popular restaurants, and he seemed to be able to create a connection, a network of people who they're like the better people, who, some amazing animators, and Silver Snail, George of the Silver Snail, who is the biggest comic book store probably in Canada.
And it's what it is basically. It's the reincarnation of the franchise. It's right now you can go out and check out on CaptainCanuck.com. There's 5 webisodes, which sorry, I keep hitting this in a funny way. Which when all put together, when watched back to back, make one half-hour episode. And that's sort of our calling card right now. And what we want to do with this is we're talking to E1, which is a big distributor in Canada. And we're thinking, hopefully, we do a big feature film, animated feature, which then will spin off into an animated series.
Yeah, it's got a great cast. I mean,
Tatiana Maslany, Laura Vandervoort,
and
You guys should be in the next Muppet movie.
I would love to do that.
Oh, I'd love to.
What a brilliant show.
I think we got time for maybe one more question.
Yes. Sure. Yes, you.
Fire away.
Brownie
The
queen.
brownie lady.
Oh, did you like your brownies that
I
way?
have not tried it.
No, they're for tomorrow with my daughter.
Oh, okay.
In front of a movie.
How much of your character is written, and how much do you bring? How much are you able to influence when playing roles? Especially for you, because I have a feeling you're very, very naughty by design.
Good question.
What would give you that idea?
I've influenced the track of the character through, because what happens generally, because it's hard to do when you're filming the show throughout the season. You just don't have, there's no time. The writers generally, they're not as accessible. So what happens at the beginning of each season is that generally you'll try and meet with the showrunner or maybe the exec a little, and they'll tell you what they have planned, and then you can sometimes tell them what you think that should happen, or what you think would be an interesting journey for the character to go on. Some things they pick up on, some things they don't. A lot they don't. But
they're also forced by the structure.
It's for the structure.
Like they have to facilitate certain storylines, most especially Anna's. And so, you know, it's always a struggle to get the different storylines to be represented. And
it's just the core of the character sometimes is what you can try and protect a little. It's like the journey of the core of the character. Like, I mean, for instance, with Vex, I mean, there were times where it was like, well, I don't know whether I could be in every episode, to be honest, because I think this character is going to become a bit, it'll be too much, and we're not at the point where I can like do other things with him right now because there's not enough info. So then you try and do it in smart ways because you know that you're not contracted even to do only X amount of episodes or whatever. So you've got to try and figure out what would be a really interesting arc and journey for this character given what I have. And sometimes you talk to them that way. And I felt personally, I mean, for the character by and large throughout the 5 seasons, I've done a fairly good job of that. But a lot of the scenes and the things that they get you to do and all the other kind of the rest of it is I've got nothing to do with. The only thing I was like, you know, it'd be great, interesting if he got challenged right now. Maybe what happens if he lost his power, because he's like the most powerful Fae. And then I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, what happens if there was an army of Mesmers? If there was a whole like clan of them that nobody could mess with them really? So what if he's the only one? What if like they got rid of them because they were too powerful? So some of those storylines are things that I came up with and offered to them, and I thought that'd be really interesting from Vex's point of view. Somebody who's lost all his family to try and find a family, which then it opens up a different way of looking at the character for people who watch the show. Which is then you have the character who at the beginning you hated and you know had all this stuff going on. Then you'd start to, because people in life, you know, is only trying to find out what was behind it. People do really terrible things sometimes, but once you find out what the whole track to get them there was, you're like, well, you know, maybe there wasn't much option, or there wasn't always an option, but you know, you have to give reason to things, and I think our show does a pretty good job of that by and large over a lot of other shows.
Yeah, the writers are they are sort of hamstrung or sort of locked in with having to, you know, one, there's also the network. It's not just writers, right? There's a lot of people who put in their 2 cents about these characters and story arcs. So even though we're playing these characters, and a lot of times we'll have great ideas about them, they may not be usable within the shows, what they have to get done that season. I've over the years given them a lot of great stuff, which has sort of come out in little ways, like in episode 205, where we went in Dyson's backstory a bit. The way we even ended season 1, where when Dyson runs off into the woods, they didn't know how to end the Bo Dyson storyline, and it was just, I sat with them and I was like, look, just have him run out like a wounded animal. We'll have him run away into the woods, as opposed to, originally they were trying to write this big scene of me and Anna where it was like, well, this thing called the Norn did this and I don't know, and you know, and it was like, no, let's stop explaining. Let's just live it, you know, let these characters react. This is one of the one of the things that you always struggle with on TV, is that they often want to overwrite it to explain it because they're caught within the bounds of, what if someone's just tuning into the show for the first time this episode, you know? It's like, yeah, yes, you have to have things that are presentable in a way that, yes, that person can get into the show, but I really don't like where they explain everything over and over and over again, just in case that person, it's like, you know what, the people who do watch it all the time, they need to be respected too. Stop over-explaining the show. Let them.
That's way smarter than you think.
Yeah, the audience we're talking about, and this is one of the things that the writer or the network and writers often get kind of stuck into, is that from our perspective, the intelligence of the audience is sometimes not respected as much as we'd like to. Like for us, saying less and doing more is better, as opposed to explaining shit all the time. But anyway, I digress.
And then a lot of it is sacrificed with the fact that, you know, we're primarily a procedural show as well. I mean, ultimately, you've got to solve that case by the end of the episode.
Well, so this is what we've struggled with.
You know, there's a structure within that means there's, you know, you have a lot of exposition, you have a lot of explaining to do, and sometimes when you get tight up against episodes and they're not quite working out as well, there's a lot of explaining that happens. and in a lot of our development within the characters get sacrificed for the fact that, hey, they got to explain to you why that crazy monster did what they did.
Yeah, so you're trying to fit like some character development within why Mrs. Henderson, the high school teacher, is really the swamp creature.
It's
and
all
why
that
that's
Marley.
and why that's exactly, and why that's possible and pertinent to Bo's storyline of finding her mother. Because, oh my God, she was the head maiden's. She was the handmaiden's teacher back in Fay High School who knew the secret location of Trick's blood book, Blood Diary. Tune in next time.
Blood Diaries. The Blood Diaries. That's the
Diary.
spin-off. That's his spin-off.
That's
The
right,
Blood
Blood
Diaries.
Well, we wait for the Blood Diaries to come out.
Yeah.
Ladies and
I would
gentlemen,
do that.
I think our time is up. Let's give a big round of applause to Kris Holden-Reid, Paul Amos from Boston. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having us here in Boston. Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't help, but thank you. This is way down.
Way down in the hole.